Huh.
Oh.
Huh.
Hmm.
Huh.
Quit being obnoxious, Jake.
Who's
Jesus
being
Christ.
obnoxious?
Hurry up, I want to get this teamwork.
I will literally kill you.
You took forever writing the episode.
Me?
Yeah.
You wrote the episode.
I didn't write the episode, you wrote this episode.
I didn't write this episode.
So if it's a mess, it's you.
Grammar.
Is fundamental. Reading is fundamental.
Hello, and welcome to the Reading is Fundamental podcast.
The podcast where we talk about and break down legal issues in and related to the entertainment industry.
Why? Because we're attorneys.
And you're not.
Well, most likely you're not. The podcast was created with the goal of educating independent artists who want to make sense of the legal issues they face in their careers. We're here to break it down for you and give you the good tea on how to navigate the legal situations in your careers.
All this will be done through the lens of our lives, our gayness, our sex positivity, radical acceptance, and our love of Drag Race, which is why this podcast is named Reading is Fundamental, because you need
to read your damn contracts. In this episode, we'll be furthering our conversation on copyright. In the previous episode, we discussed copyright in terms of characters, and today we're going to be talking about copyright in the sense of music.
But before we get to the material, we have a little legal disclaimer for you.
The information on this podcast is for general information purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. This information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship.
Wow.
I know, isn't that good? I'm
actually
just
really
like
good at that.
going for it.
You're just like really buzzing through it.
Yeah, I'm
doing a
just
good job.
like face down, ass up, doors cracked open, get in and get out.
So every day.
Every day, yeah, so Tuesday. So Tuesday.
Okay, so you just did this huge ride yesterday for AIDS Life Cycle.
I did 71 and a half miles to be exact.
At half, it matters.
The half matters, it does, especially when you're at 71 miles and you
Oh,
still got
God.
half a mile more to go. It sucks.
So what's the longest day on
The longest
cycle?
day on Life Cycle is day 2. I know it's a century, which means it's over 100 miles. I don't know exactly how much.
Okay.
It's like 110 maybe.
And that takes like how long?
That takes all day. You start at 7.
Oh,
I remember starting at like 7 and barely getting in by the end of the day. They have a
Jesus
sweet crew.
Christ.
So as soon as the sun goes down or while the sun is setting, there'll be like the caboose that comes back and picks up anyone that can't make it for the day.
wow.
And I remember just like riding in front of the caboose, barely making it.
And this is like June, so it's like the longest day.
It's June. It's hot as fuck. I hate that day. Honestly, hate doing AIDS life cycle.
Say it again.
No, I hate doing AIDS life cycle till about day 4, and then the Stockholm syndrome kicks in, and then I'm like, oh my god, look at the family here. I love this.
This is amazing. Hopefully, I won't die.
Yeah, but like
Everybody, please raise money for AIDS Life Cycle by visiting Stefan's website and donating to him.
Yeah, it's tofighhiv.org/go/Stefan F. Ferris, Ferris.
Tax deductible?
Yes, $10,000 via PayPal before taxes.
I still need to make you a dress for the red dress day
Yes,
thing.
you do. I did not forget about that.
You and my friend who's in SoCal is doing it, and I'm also going to make a dress for him too.
I want something Maddie inspired from
Bitch,
Euphoria.
you're going to get what I give you.
No, I want cutouts on the side. I want it to be skanky.
Oh my god. You are going to get what I make for you.
I don't want no Cassie look. I want a Maddie look.
Oh my god. That would be really cute, actually. If it was
would.
just like a really slinky dress.
Yeah. I'd have to
And it's
like,
going to be hot, right?
I'm already waking up at 5, so I'd have to wake up at like 2 to do all my eye makeup.
Ew, you're actually not going to do makeup.
I'm not going to do makeup.
There's no way.
But to bring it back to Drag Race for a
Mhm.
minute, we did hear about the next All-Stars.
We did. All-Stars. I wish they would have made it like All-Stars Superstars or something.
Yeah, that it was like a separate name.
Yeah.
Like separate brand. I wonder if that's like a whole new process. I wonder like you're onboarded with the All-Stars with VH1. Is it just easy to kick out another season as opposed to
As an
like
All-Star.
proposing an entire new brand and going through that process?
Yeah. I think it could be All-Stars, but say like All-Star Superstars or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then then the next normal one is the numbered one. You know what I mean? This is
Right.
like
This is All-Star 7. Yeah, that just happens to be all winners. Well, maybe she'll make that distinction on the episode and be like, "You're all superstars." Actually, notice I called RuPaul she. Have you ever noticed on the show that none of the contestants ever refer to RuPaul with female pronouns? They refer to other cast members as like she and her, but whenever they're referring to RuPaul, it's always he.
I always think about this with Bob the Drag Queen because everybody says he for Bob the
Do
Drag
they?
Queen.
I never picked up on that.
Yeah, like hardly ever anybody ever says she.
I always like wondered if it was like somewhere in a contract that you can't call RuPaul she.
You can't misgender RuPaul, but she can misgender you.
Right. but we just read the contract and it's not in there.
It's not in there. I mean, for Bob, her name's Bob, so it's like it's pretty easy to say he when you're talking about Bob the Drag Queen. But yeah, so All Stars, Superstars, who is in your front runner list already?
I think my front runners are Raja and Jinx.
Okay, wow. Season 3, Season 5.
Season 3, Season 5. Who are yours?
I love Trinity. Like,
I know.
Shut up. You need to like her.
I do like her. I like her looks, and that's about it.
I won't hear any of it.
Actually, she had a great Snatch Game.
Yes, she did.
I don't know. I'm not excited. You know what would be great TV? If fucking Monet and Trinity tied again.
That is not.
If they brought them back just to give them a tie.
Just to give. I mean, there's gonna be a Monet Trinity lip sync. Like,
yeah, we know
sure.
that. We know that.
Like, there you go. Okay, well, let me finish because you didn't let me finish.
I didn't. Okay, so Trinity.
I don't even remember who else is on it. I'm just kidding. I think Jinx is gonna do very well.
I think so too.
I think she just. And like it's probably been like about 10 years since she's been on, and that's to me 10 years of growth. Like she doesn't seem like the type of person to just kind of just like sit there and not like learn and push herself. I mean, she's like gotten on Hulu and like all these other things, so I think she's gonna do really well. Other than that, I don't know who else is on.
So we got Raja, Jinx, Trinity, Monet.
Yeah.
Evie.
Yeah, I like Evie. She's not. I don't think.
I love Evie. Evie, Jada, the Vivian. That's 8.
The Vivian. You don't think the Vivian's gonna do well?
I think the Vivian will do fine. I think the Vivian is the least I'm excited to see.
Interesting.
I think season 1 of Drag Race UK was very like comedy challenge focused, and she did very well. But I don't really like. I don't know. Is she a look queen?
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I think like Evie will definitely have to step up her looks if she wants to even be close to the level of some of these other girls.
I think Evie's the black horse.
The dark horse of the
dark horse.
competition.
Yeah. What did Jocelyn Fox say? Was that her?
I forget which one is right now.
Yeah.
It's either the black horse or the dark horse.
I think dark horse is right, but I think Jocelyn Fox
She
kept
said
on
black.
saying black horse.
Wonk wonk.
Wonk wonk. I'm touching my nipple right now.
But I have high hopes for this season because Drag Race. Oh my god, no! Project Runway did All-Star Series, and their All-Star 7 was an all-winner season.
Ooh.
So it's like it's very much that Drag Race is following in the footsteps of Project Runway. Like their All-Star 7 was all winners, and it was good. Like it was such a good season. So I'm hoping that this is going to be the same.
Yeah, there's rumors that there's no eliminations, but we also heard rumors that there was no eliminations the same time that we heard there was only 6 episodes, and they just confirmed that it's 12 episodes, which is making me a little shaky whether the no eliminations rule is actually real.
I don't know. I just can't imagine them eliminating a winner. You know?
No, yeah, it would make sense.
Yeah.
I don't think they would keep it for the other All-Stars. Like, I think going into All-Stars 8, it's still going to be lipstick drama. But
Yeah.
I hope for at least for the all-winners, if they're investing the money, let's see all the looks.
Yes. And they, even in the teaser, it was like, prepare for looks. And they showed 3 full looks. So if they're willing to, like, dish out 3, I hope that there's a whole cannon full. Like,
even if they are eliminated from the competition, I still want them to, like, show up and do the runways and be like,
yes.
Let me, like, get my TV time in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So what are we talking about today, Jake?
we are going to take a deeper dive into copyright. So, in the last episode, we talked about copyright and copyrighted characters. So, we talked about James Bond and Superman and his
Batmobile.
The Batmobile, which I had a lot of opinions on. But this time around, we're going to be focusing on music and music copyrights.
So, what is a copyright, you ask? Copyright is any original work with authorship fixed in a tangible medium. What is a tangible medium? Well, it could be literary works, artistic works, music. Tangible mediums can mean digital platforms. Really, the second that a thought leaves your head and gets on a piece of paper or gets in a Word document or gets on film or in a recording, it's become fixed in a tangible medium.
Yep, we talked about last podcast how it could even be an ice sculpture. It just has to be tangible for a small amount of time.
As the ice sculpture demonstrates, the copyright forms the second that the idea manifests into real life. You don't need to register for copyright to have it. But Jake, can you tell us a little bit why having a copyright registration may be beneficial?
Yeah, so it creates a presumption, first of all, that you are the owner. So the first thing it's going to do is show that you are the actual owner of this copyright. You don't have to go through the process of proving that you're the owner of it. And in addition to that, you can file a copyright infringement suit if you have registration, and you have an ability to be eligible for statutory damages and attorney's fees and the cost of your lawsuit.
And in regards to presumption of ownership, sure, it definitely helps to have a registration, because if someone sees you and says they came up with an idea first, the registration will have the date on it. But again, we stress the actual copyright forms when the idea exists. So if you're unable to afford a copyright registration, the old school method is to mail it or email it to yourself, so you have the idea fixed in the medium that has a date set.
Yep. Any type of evidence that you can show that you created at this point, you definitely want to document it right at the outset. So one of the main reasons that copyright registration exists is because we want to reward creative people in our society, and in return, they get to control how that creation is put out into the universe. So if there was no kind of benefit for an artist, we could say that they might not want to create any works. There's no benefit for them. They can't make any monetary gain off of it. Of course, that's not true. There's lots of people who still, produce art just because they love it. But if we want to encourage creative people to make a job or a living out of it, we need to give them something in return for it. And that's their right to produce their artistic works however they want.
So basically, copyrights are incentives for creative people to keep on creating.
Yep.
So next we'll talk about the rights that come with copyright. So you have this idea that becomes fixed in a tangible medium. You have the copyright. You may have registered for it. What does that actually permit you to do? Well, it permits you to reproduce the work or make copies of it. It gives you the right to perform or display the work. It gives you the right to license the use of the work to others. And it gives you the right to create derivative works of your work and to prevent others from making derivative works. What is a derivative work, Jake?
Let me think of an example. So Andy Warhol uses a lot of derivative works. So he, one of the most famous art pieces that he has, I actually have it on the screensaver of my phone, is of Marilyn Monroe. So somebody took a photo of Marilyn Monroe, and they are the author of that photo. So they own the copyrights in that photo. Andy Warhol took that, he put his own spin on it, threw some filters, colors, whatever it was, to make it kind of his own unique style, and that is a derivative of the original copyright work. So depending on how derivative it is and how much kind of zhuzh you put on it, it could be separately copyrightable, or it would just kind of be an infringement on somebody else's.
Right. And in terms of music, would you consider a derivative work to be basically what happened with Olivia Rodrigo? She created this song.
Oh God,
that was so similar to Paramore's.
It's literally the exact same.
I know. I think the song is a different interpretation of Paramore's. They're two different aspects. It's two different women dating the same guy. I know you totally disagree with me.
I mean, that's not, in terms of what is copied under afforded under copyright, it's an absolute infringement. It's the story has nothing to do with it.
I know.
The music and the lyrics are the exact same. The melody is almost exactly the same.
But that's a great example of derivative work.
No. Okay. I'm gonna disagree with you right off the bat because I don't think it's a good example of a derivative work. I think it's a good example of an infringement.
Okay.
I think an infringement, or I think there is a difficult line to walk between what is infringement and what's a derivative work. But derivative work has much more of the artist's input or a new artist's input and much more transformative. This is honestly pretty damn similar song.
So what would you say is a good example of a musical derivative work?
Anytime a musical artist covers another musical artist, I would say it's a derivative work. You're taking most of the time they're licensed anyway, but you're creating a derivative work based on that with a license. So you're like doing a cover and you're doing it in a jazz style, or you're doing it in a salsa style, or like whatever. That's a derivative work.
Okay. So we have the copyright. We know what we could do with it. Jake, can you tell us a little bit, how long does copyright last?
So the length of a copyright is the extent of the life of the author plus 70 years. And for corporations, it's plus 95 years from the original publication. So that's, say, if we are someone born in 1900 and they die in 1950, then we still add on another 70 years on top of that and that's the length of the copyright rights. And you might imagine, oh, well, they're like dead. They're not going to be able to exercise their copyright rights. Well, those pass on to their heirs and assigns. So any of their children or anybody they leave in the will, they can assign their copyright rights, and their beneficiaries can benefit from the copyrights from then on.
And this isn't how the copyright law used to always be. There used to be much shorter provisions for how long a copyright would last. But as you recall, Jake, that we learned in law school, it's actually been Disney that's been pushing for longer and longer copyright ownership periods because their properties are starting to go into the public domain.
Yeah.
When a work enters the public domain, it means that it is no longer under copyright protection, and it means that it's free and available for the public to use without a license or permission. Fun fact, the song Happy Birthday actually just entered the public domain in 2016, and there was a big court case about that.
Yeah, there's an Oakland attorney who is actually the lead attorney on that. It's Daniel Schacht. He's at Donahue Fitzgerald. Met him a couple times. That's his claim to fame, is he's the Happy Birthday attorney.
Oh.
When you write and perform an original song, what copyrights do you get once you fix that into a tangible medium? Well, one of the copyright protections that you're going to get is the creation of the music itself. If you're a musician, this is the sheet music, the melody, the lyrics that are attached to it. It's kind of the notes on the page, if you will. Not everything has to be written out in the music staff. It could just be written out as chords, or maybe just lyrics on a page, anything like that. But you're going to get the copyright into that music separately. The second type of copyright protection that you'll get is in the recording of the song. So it could be one similar song, but recorded two different ways. And maybe as an example, like we were talking, like you make a cover of it.
Yep.
That's the same underlying music, but it's a different sound recording.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yep.
So you're at a concert, right?
Mm-hmm.
The artist, let's assume that they own all the copyrights to their work. They own the copyright to the music of the sheet music, and then they own a copyright to their performance right now, right?
If they're performing it, it's not fixed in a tangible medium. If it's live.
Okay. So you're watching a video screen.
Yeah.
Let's say the concert's being recorded and they're displaying the video screen of what the recording is. So there's a recording going on of the concert. Mm-hmm. You're also in the concert, front row. You have your phone out. You're getting your own little home video recording of it. Whose copyright would control? Do you both have a copyright?
Yes. So you'll have a copyright into the video that you are creating.
Yeah.
But you do not have the rights to the music that's in that video. The underlying music rights on it, you do not have the right to. So if you wanted to display that, you don't have the right to publish or display the music in it, you would need to get a sync license or mechanical license to play your video with that music in it.
Okay, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but pretty much. So if you're at a concert taking video, you own the copyright to that video, but it doesn't give you permission to necessarily post that on like Facebook or Instagram. And if the artist or the venue really wanted to come at you, they could tell you to remove the video.
Absolutely.
All right. So you actually made a great segue into our next topic, which is music licenses. So we talked about how there's two different types of music copyrights: copyrights in the actual sheet music, and then copyright of the actual recorded performance. Once you have these rights, what can you do with them? Well, you could license them out. And a license is giving permission for another person or an organization to use your lyrics, to use your music, to use the actual recording, whether that be like a music video or the audio recording. And there's three different types of music licenses.
The first one is a performance license. It's basically giving the permission to publicly perform the song. The second is a mechanical license. It gives you permission to distribute the song, such as a CD or on Spotify, Apple Music, anything like that. And the third one is a sync license, and that's the right to put the music in a movie or a video.
Right. So I think a great practical example of this, going back to RuPaul again, is during the talent shows. When the queens decide to perform one of their own songs. So they obviously need to provide a sync license to Drag Race for the show to be able to use the song and display it in the episode that you see.
But that doesn't mean that the show owns the rights into the performance. The drag queen performer is the one who still owns the copyright to their own performance. This was explicitly covered in the contract for Drag Race Season 15, which we reviewed. It said, right off the top of the bat, if you create any, music for it, you have to give us a license to it, and you will still retain the original rights to it after the show.
So the drag queen will still own their song, but the show will own the particular recording and performance of the song as it appears in the episode.
So what if somebody wants to upload their music to social media? What permissions do you give to social media platforms and streaming services when you upload your music to their platforms?
So this is covered in the platform's terms of service. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. They'll all require the content creator to provide a license for the content, one, to appear on the website, and two, to be distributed and viewed to others. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they own a copyright to it. You really need to get in the dirty details of your terms of service to see what exactly you're providing a license to, because you may be providing them more of a license than those two basic things. In terms of another person viewing content, what right do I have to view someone else's content? I basically have a private right to view other people's content. What does this mean? This means that I can view it in my home, but I can't open up YouTube and put on a concert for people outside. I can't go to a bar or restaurant and start playing music for a group of people. Technically, all the bars and restaurants that do Drag Race viewing parties don't have a license to do it for public display.
Yeah. A lot of them are kind of just using their own Xfinity or whatever Comcast service and just putting it on the TVs in the bars. I mean, I don't think that Viacom is really gonna go after all of them, because ultimately it just brings more attention to the show, so it's not worth their enforcement. But technically it's not allowed.
Yeah, it's technically something that they could decide to enforce, but I think in a cost benefit analysis, there's much more benefit to kind of letting these viewing parties and illegal viewerships of the shows and the content happen.
So if you're wondering how copyrighted music can be out in the world without being an infringement all the time, there's a couple reasons behind it. So a lot of social media platforms have to deal with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Now, without getting into the full weeds of it, basically, internet companies are responsible for taking down infringing content on their websites. So if there is an infringing person who is putting on music that they don't own, they will take it down immediately or respond to a copyright author's request to take it down. So out in the real world, if you're in the physical world, not on the internet, you might walk into a business and hear some music playing in the background. Those are covered by blanket licenses, which are available through organizations called ASCAP or BMI. They hold the rights to these mechanical licenses and sync licenses, and they can give a blanket license to a restaurant. Say they pay a certain amount every year, and then they can pay anything within their ASCAP catalog, which is pretty much anything on the radio. And then they don't have to worry about infringement. They kind of pay for an upfront blanket license in advance.
So ASCAP is kind of like the business version of a Spotify account. I pay a subscription fee for Spotify, so it gives me a license to listen to Spotify's catalog of music, but that's really just intended for my own personal use. ASCAP works the same way for a business. Like you just said, they provide a subscription fee and then get to use it.
Now, we want to take a little bit of an aside to talk about fair use. Now, I think we're planning on talking about fair use in a whole episode in itself. So we're going to try and keep this as brief as possible, but we know it's important because we hear fair use a lot, especially with people who are trying to claim that it's fair use before they even get an infringement. So, Stefan, what are the fair use factors that a court is going to use in a fair use defense?
So the court will consider whether the content that you're using without permission or without a license falls into any of the following categories. If you're presenting news, if you're providing commentary, if the work you're creating is a parody, if it is a criticism of the original work, or if you're using another author's work for educational purposes or for a nonprofit service. The court has developed a 4-part test that we're going to get a little bit more in depth on our next episode. But basically, like one of these categories and one of these factors are not in and of themselves determinative. It is kind of a holistic approach and balancing act that is determined already when you're in court. So it's not, when we say that fair use is a defense, it's not that you could just take someone else's work because you're providing news or commentary or it's a parody. At this point, you're in court, you're spending money to defend it on this. So these are really considerations that you should make before using someone else's content.
Yeah. So what you're like really getting at is like, don't go out there and being like, oh, I'm using it and it's fair use. And it's like, you don't even know what that is, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, fair use is a defense. So you can't assert it initially and be like, oh, I'm using this under a fair use like license or whatever. Like, it's only a defense, which means you will have to be like served for an infringement, and then you can use this as a defense to say it was an infringement. And no, it is not enough to credit the person. I love when I see things on YouTube and they're like, oh, I just wanted to credit the author of it. I don't own any of the rights, but I just wanted to credit. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything it doesn't give you any benefit to say, I don't own the rights to this music or the rights to this music belong to. It's still infringement. It doesn't get you out of it. It's not a defense. It means nothing. It's a stupid myth that's propagated by people just looking at other people's posts and thinking that it's okay.
Yeah.
Another thing that I hate
She's going off. She's going off.
Is when people like post, like you'll see this in like hookup profiles and stuff like that like the information and the photos contained in my profile are my copyrighted materials, and I don't give any license for anyone else to use this. Actually, you should have read your terms of service with the platform, because the fact that it's displayed on the website is in it of itself a license for another person to display the work.
Yes.
So you really need to understand the basics of copyright law, the basics of fair use, and know that any last minute added text is not a loophole to get you out of copyright infringement.
No. Stop it. Stop using those.
And why is this important, Jake? What could happen if you're found guilty of copyright infringement?
Penalties. So You can be fined anywhere between $750 or $150,000 per instance of infringement. And these are statutory fines, right? Like it's written in the law, like anything you do is going to be subject to one of these fines. And a single video can have multiple copyright infringements. There can be an infringement for downloading the song. There could be a separate infringement for putting the song in a video or uploading it on YouTube. It's not enough to say, like we said, that you don't have the rights or that you weren't aware of what the law is or anything like that. Ignorance of the law is not a defense.
Reading is fundamental.
So what's the actual risk of getting sued? Will you get sued?
Will you get sued? It depends. There was a big era enforcement in the early 2000s where large companies were suing college students, were suing stay-at-home parents for downloading illegal music because they wanted to prove a point. And these people were charged with like tens of thousands of dollars of fines, like crippling debt and fines. We don't really see that movement anymore. And I think, to be honest, if a company were to do that to like a marginalized group, I think there would be a huge public outcry about it.
Yeah. I mean, you're definitely referencing like the Napster, the Grokster.
Yeah.
That was like early 2000s, like you said. I mean, we were still like teenagers, I feel like, when that was happening. And it was like, oh, what do you mean I can't just go to Napster and download songs? I've been doing it for years. And so it was kind of like a weird mindset. And then at the same time, I don't know if you noticed, like, but like on a lot of movies and stuff, there was like the FBI warning.
Oh my God, I remember that. Yes.
The FBI warning at the beginning. It's like, just so you know, infringement of this, blah, blah, blah. Because there was like a lot of ripping off of DVDs and like you could just buy a bootleg DVD.
Oh my God, yeah.
So kids, DVDs are silver discs that have movies on them.
I would do this all the time. I would go, so there used to be a place called Castro Superstar. And they had a huge porn section, and
it was bootleg porn.
No, it was their actual like DVDs of porn. But I was a cheap college student, so I would go home and have my fraternity brother burn them for me, and I would like take them out of their case so he didn't know what they were.
Wow.
Yeah, that was illegal. I could have got fined $750 to $150,000 per burned DVD.
California bar, I'd like to report a violation of attorney ethics. No, bitch.
I mean, I'm just making that story up for purposes of podcast.
For my friend, I'm asking
Allegedly.
about my... Allegedly.
Yeah, asking for a friend. Asking for a friend.
Allegedly.
But we've also seen like a lot of evolution in music. It's when these lawsuits were happening, there wasn't the iTunes Music Store or Google Play, and there wasn't really platforms for people to easily download music and pay for it like we do now. There wasn't Spotify and subscription services that made it easy for people to purchase music, or actually they don't own the music.
Nope,
they're purchasing a license to play it.
Yep.
And I would say that this huge litigation and this huge enforcement of copyright, I would say, led to the new distribution models that we see today of subscription music services and of digital stores.
I thought it was just because Apple and Google wanted to make more money.
I think that's always the answer. But in reality today, litigation costs money. Like we said with fair use, yeah, you could raise fair use as a defense after you've paid an attorney to go to court, but it also costs money for the companies to start the litigation in the first place. And when you're trying to enforce copyright, do you want to spend a bunch of money to go to court to maybe get $750 back? No. The most likely outcome for a copyright infringer is that they're going to receive a cease and desist letter, which is basically an angry letter from the copyright owner telling the person to take down whatever material they stole, not to do it again, and then to commit in writing that they'll basically stop doing it.
I just sent out a cease and desist letter last week at work.
Yeah, it's like a written slap on the wrist.
Yeah, and like, stop using my shit or else I'm gonna get you. Get her, Jade.
Get her, Jade.
So we wanted to put this into a real world example for you. You might have noticed in recent history that Taylor Swift is re-recording all of her music. And the reason behind it has something to do with the music copyrights. So Stefan, could you walk us through what happened with Taylor Swift and her music?
Yeah, this is actually like a great real world example that breaks down the different types of music copyright and licensing rights. So, Taylor Swift was signed to Big Machine Label Group. She initially signed with her first album in 2006, and the contract lasted until 2018 for about the span of 6 studio albums. In the contract, Taylor signed away the copyrights to the ownership of the mastered recordings, which is basically the final version of the song that you hear on the album, on the radio. It's what you purchase on iTunes. And I would say that that's pretty common for an artist at that stage, that early in their career, to not have the bargaining power to be able to bargain for rights to the masters.
Yeah, much less leverage.
So in this deal, Taylor would get a cut of the sales. The studio would own the masters, or the label would own the masters, but they would be responsible of the marketing and distribution. They would have complete control over how the content was released. But the problem arose when Big Machine decided that they wanted to sell Taylor's masters, the first 6 albums. Taylor Swift proposed buying them. I mean, she's one of the wealthiest women in music.
Yeah.
But the record label refused to sell them to her. Instead, they came back and proposed a new contract. For each new album that Taylor would record, she would receive one of her old masters back. But that meant that the studio would still own 100% of the rights and the new masters that Taylor would create. That would kind of just repeat this cycle of the label controlling Taylor Swift. What really upset Taylor is when the label instead decided to sell the masters to Ithaca Records for $300 million, which is owned by someone named Scooter Braun. Do you know who the fuck that is?
No, but he sounds nefarious.
Yeah, he's shady. I know the name. To be honest, I don't really know too much about him except for the fact that Taylor has described him as a bully. And at the end of the day, it's someone that Taylor didn't want to have control of her music. It's the music she created. It's her first 6 albums. And now this asshole that she hates has total control over how it's sold. So after Taylor's contract expired with Big Machine, she switched to Columbia Records. And in this new contract, having a lot more prowess and stardom, she was able to negotiate to own 100% of the new masters that she creates. And this basically started with the album The Lovers Forward. So she owns all aspects of copyright in her music. The sheet music, the recording, everything. She's in complete control. So now, as a kind of fuck you to Scooter Braun, she's going back and re-recording her first 6 albums. And she's able to do that because she owns the copyright in the original sheet music.
Yeah.
She's basically just going back, using her copyright in the sheet music and creating a new recording with Columbia Records that she'll now have 100% ownership in herself.
So you went through a lot. Let me ask you a couple questions to break it down into chunks. So you said that the label owns the master recording. What does that mean?
That means the label owns the version of the song that's available, that's released to the public. It's the song that appears on the album, that's released on the radio. It's the final recording that's fixed.
And it's important that we understand it's a recording and not the copyright into the sheet music. Who owns the copyright to the sheet music?
Well, according to the information I read, Taylor still owns the copyright to the music that she's written.
All right. So we have one copyright which Taylor owns, but they own the sound recording of it. And they, like you said, get to do whatever they want with it. So if they want to put it into a Pepsi commercial, they can put it into a Pepsi commercial.
Yeah, so that means basically that if they wanted to use Taylor's music to promote a product,
or in a film maybe,
or an organization or a film that Taylor doesn't believe in or that Taylor's actively opposed to, she has no control over that.
They could play it at the Republican National Convention and she could not give any. Yeah. She couldn't say anything about it because they own the masters to the recording. But like you said, she owns the original copyright, which means she can make a separate recording of her own music. This is pretty unique, right? I mean, there's not I think this is a pretty good distinction of like when you hear a lot of times people in LA like talk about, oh, do you have the masters, the rights to your masters or whatever, or are you a singer-songwriter? Because that makes a distinction. If you are a singer-songwriter, that means you own one of the copyrights at the very least, right? You own to the things that you created. But if you're an artist like, I mean, not dragging her, but like I love Kesha. Like,
I love Kesha.
If she's not a singer-songwriter, which means that she's mostly a performer. Other people write the songs and she performs them, so she doesn't really have any copyrights to, milk from at all. She's just kind of the performer on them.
Yeah, I think another good example is Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton.
Yes, because Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah, so Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You," and then she gave Whitney Houston a license to perform it and record it. So Whitney Houston owns the recording of "I Will Always Love You," but Dolly Parton owns the underlying music.
Oh
and
my God.
in fact, in that deal, every time Whitney plays, Dolly cashes in a paycheck.
That is a really good example.
But it also means that if Dolly wants to record the version herself,
yeah, she can record another.
She doesn't have to ask anyone because she already owns it.
Reading is fundamental.
To me, I'm like, this is good for Taylor. Like, you are smart. You're doing it. The question I have for Taylor, or like how this is going to be in the future, is do you tell like the radio stations which one to put up? You know what I mean?
So I think
because there's going to be an old one and a new one of every song.
Right. So I think there is a little bit of danger in re-recording your music, because if you already have goodwill built into the first recording and fans already love it, what would incentivize them to repurchase it?
Well, first of all, I don't think people are purchasing anymore, right? Because it's like, unless you're a person who's like collects albums and stuff, but it's like, I think most people are just using licensed like subscription services now. But I think if you're a real, what is a Taylor Swift band called? Swiftie? If you're like a real Swiffer.
You're a real Swifter.
If you're a real Swiffer.
Quicker pepper upper.
If you're a real Swiftie.
Yeah.
God, if you're a real Swiftie, I think you would listen to the new ones. Like, you're gonna listen to it, and you might even like it more because it's like, oh, her voice has matured, or like she's doing a different spin on it, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. What I think is super unique about Taylor, because there's been other artists who've tried to do this strategy and have failed, just because they can't get the audiences to buy into the goodwill of the new song. But Taylor is giving you a whole new experience. Like, take that song. I think it's All Too Well. It was originally like a 3-minute song, and when Taylor released it, she released it as like this 10-minute like epic narrative that like gave backstory on her relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal and that fucking scarf. Do you remember the scarf?
No, but don't say anything bad about Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't care. I love him.
No, he's the villain.
No, I love him.
Villain edit. But Taylor isn't just simply like, she's a smart businesswoman. She's not just a lot of the way she is just giving you the same exact song re-recorded. She's providing a more comprehensive experience with her music. You're getting deeper into the backstory. You're getting a bunch of bonus content. Yeah. I think maybe with some of the albums you are getting maybe like one new song, so that may be the incentive to re-download it, but it's like the Taylor expanded universe.
I think Taylor has enough leverage. Just because she's so big. Like, I think she has enough leverage that she could literally just go to Apple Music and be like, hey, you're putting my new ones on this.
Well, do you remember like while we were in law school when Taylor removed her music?
Yes, signed a protest or like
as like a protest for Apple Music not paying their artists. So I think if Taylor...
And it changed, bitch.
Yeah, she has changed.
One good law that Trump signed is like new artist rights. But to be fair, against Trump, that like this law had been in the works for a while, because before that the artists were getting like pretty much nil for all the streaming rights, and now they're getting compensated pretty decently. So
yeah, so you may not be the biggest fan of Taylor Swift, but I think it is an excellent example of the two different types of music copyright and why it may or may not be important to record music. She's been really impactful kind of behind the scenes of music, just setting new trends with music copyright, standing up for independent artists.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
We stand Taylor. So now that we've wrapped up our section on music copyrights, we're going to move into our entertainment news section.
So listen, last episode, you had asked me about the monkey in the copyright. Do you remember that?
I do. So basically, we were talking about who owns copyright and authorship. And if a human takes a photo, they own the copyright to the photo that they took.
I came across this article that talked about AI authorship. So AI is a hot button conversation all the time. I work for a company that does AI in their product. It's all in the culture, the zeitgeist right now. So what if an AI program was able to make a piece of art?
Okay, I've seen memes about this, and I know they're all jokes, but it's basically the meme where it's like, I fed a computer like 100 porno scripts, and this is the script that the computer created, and then the computer like will have written a script that kind of seems right, but like has all these errors because it's obviously not a human writing it. Is that?
Yes, that's actually a really good example. So if an AI program creates some piece of art, like a new script or a photo or something like that, who owns the copyright? So like there's a super smart 15-year-old kid and they create an AI program and they feed him a whole bunch of Pokemon people into the program, and the AI program spits out an image of a brand new Pokemon.
Okay. I'm assuming then the person who created the software owns it?
You're pretty right on, actually.
My thought process was, if we're not going to let a monkey have a copyright, why are we going to let a computer program? But the other side of that is that I would think that there's some creative work into developing the processes that create the program, the AI, which in turn creates the work. So I think the person creating the AI has indirect creation of the work. And since they're the only living human, and we have the precedent now that only humans can create, I would say that the human creates it.
So you're pretty much like spot on. The analogy that this article that I read gave was a camera. And so like if you're using the camera to take a photo, that is kind of like an instrument to help creating your artistic process.
Okay.
And so, or like your artistic work. So they're seeing this AI as a way to create an artistic work. And the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, I get how this analogy kind of works, because like you said, you're putting in some creative element in the code or whatever it is, and all the inputs and how to read the inputs into this machine, and then it's gonna like poop something out on the other end, right?
Yeah. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you think like a filter is an AI in essence?
I think AI is in all of these products, like for sure. Like when you use your Apple camera and it like automatically adjusts so that it's blurred in the background or whatever, that's definitely AI. It's like learning, it's seeing what it is, and then through automated intelligence is like, oh, that's far away, I'm going to make it blurry.
So portrait mode is AI.
Yeah.
It seems really simple if you...
Fine.
Yeah. Go harder next week, Jake.
You're like, it's actually really simple.
This is justice for the monkey. I wanted the monkey to win.
So that's all I have for our entertainment news segment.
So in this episode, we talked about what is a copyright, what rights you get from copyright, how long your copyright lasts, and then we specifically talked about the two different kinds of music copyright. We talked about the right to the underlying music and the right that exists in the recording of the music. And then we gave a practical example of all these aspects in a real world story about Taylor Swift and why she's re-recording her music.
We really hope you enjoyed learning about music and copyrights and Taylor Swift, but we're heading out for now.
Thank you for watching and listening to Reading is Fundamental. Let us know what you'd like to hear. Write us in at readingsfundamentalpodcast@gmail.com.
Make sure to follow your favorite gay attorneys at Blue Bailey SF on Instagram and at Darkly Dreaming Dextra on Instagram.
Check out Reading is Fundamental on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, and please visit our website at www.stephenferrislaw.com/readingisfundamental.
And read your damn contracts.
Because reading is what?
Fundamental to understanding the terms, conditions, expectations, and obligations of your entertainment contract. You can't do it. Oh, you almost did it. Oh.
That's fundamental. Reading is fundamental.
Necessary to understanding the terms, conditions, expectations, and obligations of your entertainment contracts.
So I just realized that shouldn't it be because reading is what? Fundamental to understanding?
Oh, yeah.
You've done how many episodes like that? I've learned.
Reading is fundamental.